Okay, so we were going through the proof of lemma 369. There what we did, we had a set x of cardinality n, right? So x has cardinality n, where n is a positive integer. So there is a bijection f from x to this set. And we had to prove that x is non-empty. That was the first job which we have done. So because x is non-empty, there will be some element in x, so we arbitrarily chose an element x in x. Okay, then we defined a function g from the set obtained from x by removing that element into this subset of the natural numbers. Where we have already discussed what n-1 means. It's a natural number whose successor is n, and the function had this definition: g of y is defined to be equal to f of y if fy is less than fx, and its definition is fy minus 1 if fy is greater than fx. We then proved that g is well defined. So this much we have achieved. So now our next job is to show that g is actually a bijection. So that will tell us that the cardinality of this set is n-1, and that's the lemma. So let us now go for that. We will first show that g is injective, that is 1 to 1. So let us take two elements in the domain of g such that their g images are equal. G of y is equal to g of z. Our aim is to show that the inputs are also equal, that is y is equal to z. Now, if it happens that f of y is less than f of x, but f of x is less than f of z, or f of z is less than fx and fx is less than fy, then for the first set of inequalities, what does our assumption give us? Then because fy is less than fx, so we have fy is equal to gy. This comes from the definition of g, fy is less than fx. Now from our assumption, gy is equal to gz, but now look at the situation we have here. Fz is greater than fx. So according to our definition of g, gz will be fz minus 1. So this happens for the first set of inequalities. Similarly for the second one, this or. For the second one, we will have similar thing with the roles of y and z interchange. So we will have f of z equal to g of z, which is gy, and this will be equal to f of y minus 1. Thus okay, so from the first set of equations, what do we get? F of y plus 1 is equal to f of z, or from the second set of equations we get fz plus 1 is equal to fy. Okay, now let us use these things back in these inequalities. So we thus have for the first set, fy is less than fx, but that is less than fz, and fz is fy plus 1. Just like that, from here we get fz less than fx is less than fy, but now fy is fz plus 1. Okay, now look at these inequalities. These are all natural numbers. So do you think these inequalities are possible? Of course not. You see, fz and fz plus 1 are natural number and its successor, a pair like that. There can be nothing in between. Nothing means no natural number in between. The same situation arises here, and this, the fact that it's something wrong, we have to refer to something. This is a contradiction to proposition 2 to 12 E, part E of that proposition, and proposition 2 to 13. If you go back to these results, you will see that if you combine them like this, then that implies that between two natural numbers, which one of them is a successor of the other, between them there can be no other natural number in this sense. So none of these inequalities is true. So we should have either both fy and fz less than fx, or both of them greater than fx. So either fy is less than fx and fz is also less than fx, or both of them are greater than fx. Yes, so this should be the case. If both of them are less than fx, then f of y is equal to, because both are less than fx, so we can apply this part of the formula for g, is equal to g of y. But from our assumption gy is equal to gz, and because fz is also less than fx, so this is equal to f of z. Now f originally is a bijection, so it is an injection also, it's an injective function. So since, see, I need some ink, give me a moment. since f is injective, this implies y is equal to z. What is the other case if both fy and fz are greater than fx? Let us see that also. If fx is less than fy and fx is also less than fz, then fy minus 1 by definition of g is equal to gy. From our assumption, gy is equal to gz, and gz again is fz minus 1. So these are two natural numbers which are equal, so their successors will also be equal. This implies successor of this is fy and the successor of that one is fz. And again, since f is injective, so we are not going to write it once more, and hence y is equal to z. So our assumption that gy and gz are equal has led us to the conclusion that y is equal to z. So that means g is injective. Okay. Now next job is to prove that g is surjective. So we start by considering any element in the range of g. Let I be a natural number such that I lies between 1 and n minus 1. Okay. Then okay, instead we will take care of the cases one by one. First, assume I is less than fx. I as a natural number is either less than fx or equal to fx or greater than fx. So we have to look at all these three cases separately. So first we consider this one. Assume I is less than fx. Since I lies between 1 and n. Okay, you look at this. Since I lies between 1 and n, and f is surjective, our original bijection is also a surjection, and now note that I also lies in the range of f, not only in the range of g but in the range of f, because it is a natural number lying between 1 and n. So it should be equal to the f image of some element surjective. We have I equal to f of y for some y belonging to x. This is coming purely from the surjectivity of f. But now we note something else. Y is not only coming from x, but because of this condition, y cannot be equal to x, because in that case f of x will be less than f of x. Note that since I is less than fx, we must have y not equal to x. Okay, now look at the situation. Y is an element in x that is different from x such that f of y is less than fx. So from the definition of the function g, this f of y is actually equal to g of y. Hence I is equal to f of y is equal to g of y, where y belongs to x minus x. So we have realized I as the g image of some element in the domain of G. So this is one case when I is less than fx. Let us now look at what happens when I is greater than fx. The equal case we will handle afterwards. Next, assume I is greater than fx. Note that because I lies between 1 and n minus 1, I plus 1 will be less than or equal to n from elementary properties of order of natural numbers. So note that I plus 1 is also lying between 1 and n, and hence owing to the surjectivity of f, I plus 1 is equal to f of z for some z belonging to x. So again, using the fact that f is surjective, now we have realized I plus 1 as the f image of some element in x. Okay. Now just like the previous case, z also cannot be equal to x, since I is greater than fx, we must have z not equal to x. Let's just quickly see what happens if we take z equal to x. You take z equal to x, then you have fx here. Fx is I plus 1, which is greater than I, which in turn is greater than fx. So that gives you a contradiction. Hence, okay, now look at the situation. Hence, I is equal to f of z minus 1. Now, what is f of z? F of z is I plus 1, and I plus 1 is greater than I, and I is greater than fx. So that means f of z is greater than fx. Additionally, z is not only coming from x but is not equal to x. So from the definition of g, this is equal to g of z, where z belongs to x minus x, because f of z is greater than fx. So from the definition of g we get this. So again here in this case also we have realized I as a G image of some element in its domain. And finally assume I is equal to fx. Okay. Since I is equal to fx, right? Since I lies between 1 and n minus 1, so this case is just like this one. We have I plus 1 also lying between 1 and but n, lying between 1 and n. Hence here also I plus 1 is equal to f of u for some u in x. This u is again coming from surjectivity of f. I should not make a mistake. Let me just check once more. We have I plus 1. Okay, so I plus 1 is a natural number in the range of f, so it will be the f image of some element in the domain of f, which is x. And just like the previous cases, u again cannot be equal to x, because I is fx, I plus 1 is greater than fx, so I plus 1 itself cannot be fx. Note that we again have u not equal to x. Hence, what is I? I is fu minus 1, where fu is greater than I, definitely, because fu is I plus 1 and I is fx, so fu is greater than fx. So that's why this will be equal to gu, where u belongs to x minus x. So that's it. We have taken care of all the situations, and in each one of them I has been realized as a G image of some element in its domain. So G is surjective. We have thus proved that G is a bijection, and hence the cardinality of this set is n minus 1. That's what we had to prove. So this completes the proof of the lemma. Now we come to the proof of the actual proposition, and that is proposition 368. We postponed the proof because we needed this lemma. So let us just quickly recall what the proposition was. So here we had some set of cardinality n, right, where n is some natural number. Then the same set cannot have some other cardinality m, where m is some natural number different from n. That is the statement of this proposition, We will now prove it with the help of this lemma, and the strategy for proof will be induction on n. So we start accordingly. We apply induction on n. When n is 0, we have x to be the empty set, then x is the empty set, x cannot be anything else. Okay, now what is it that we have to prove in this case? We already know that the empty set has cardinality 0, but does it have some other cardinality? And the answer is no. How are we concluding that? To understand why that is the case, I ask you to go back to the exercises that we solved after the section on functions. There we inquired about the conditions under which an empty function is injective, surjective and bijective. If you go to that exercise and you look at the solution, which we already have done those things, then you will realize that this is the only cardinality that empty set has. So in this case, the result is actually true. So we are not writing anything else, but we can of course write, and hence we can just mention, and hence the result is true. The justification is of course the one that I have told you just now. So this is the basis for our induction. Now we are going to assume the induction hypothesis. Assume that the result is true for every set of cardinality n where n is some natural number. Okay, let y be a set of cardinality n plus 1. Y be a set of cardinality n plus 1. We want to prove that n plus 1 is the only cardinality y can have, but contrary to that, we are supposing something else. Suppose y also has cardinality m, where m is a natural number such that m is not equal to n plus 1. Okay, so we have supposed this condition, and now we will try to get a contradiction. Now this is where we need the previous lemma. Note that y is a set of cardinality n plus 1. Since n plus 1 is greater than or equal to 1, lemma 369 implies y is non-empty and let us just I wanted to write all the things at once. Let's just use 2 lines. This implies y is non-empty, so let y be any element in y. Okay, then again using lemma 369, because that lemma also says something more than this, that the cardinality of the set obtained by removing this y from the original set is 1 less than the cardinality of y, that is n. Okay. Now this n, according to our induction hypothesis, is unique. But at the same time, because we have supposed that y also has cardinality m, so here not only will we have this, but we will have this also. Okay, it is looking somewhat strange that we are using this condition, this notation. It is better to just write the word cardinality, because I cannot use the notation unless I have proved that the cardinality is unique. Have I done that here somewhere else? No. Here I can write n minus 1 because that's what it is. This again implies y has cardinality both m minus 1 and n. N we understand, m minus 1 is the unique natural number whose successor is m. That's how we have to interpret this symbol. So now we can apply the induction hypothesis. By the induction hypothesis, this is not y, sorry, this is y minus y. By the induction hypothesis, because y minus y is a set of cardinality n, so its cardinality should be unique. So by the induction hypothesis, we have n equal to m minus 1. This implies, so if 2 natural numbers are equal, their successors are also equal, n plus 1 equal to m. A contradiction, and it is contradicting directly what we have supposed.